We all know that life is much more than food, drinks, and clothing. But the biggest mistake any one of us could make is to assume all we see is all there is. Today, we want to talk about that other dimension of reality we call the spiritual, or and other related discourses like heaven, earth, stuffs like that. Is there really another dimension? Are there really spirits out here? Let's get behind the veil. Let's consider those questions once again. Are there spirits out here? Is there another dimension to reality? I want us to start with that, from something that is accessible to everyone. Over the years, I've had this particular experience a couple of times. I believe you should have too. And what's the experience I'm talking about? Let me narrate a simple scenario. I'm in my room, I'm having a conversation with someone, and a song comes up in my mind. It begins to play within me. It catches my attention. I'm thinking about the song. And before I know it, the other person starts singing that particular song. And I wonder, what's going on? Did he just pick up on my thought? Is there something that spawned up the thought in me and in him or her at the same time? After having such an episode, as described earlier, of all of a sudden finding out myself and the person with me in the room are having the same thought, even though we weren't discussing about it before then. I remember this particular day when I left that particular person quite wondering what's going on. And on my way, I met another friend. And interestingly, we started talking, and after about 10 or 15 steps, he just randomly started singing the very same song that had played in my mind and that somebody else had voiced out in the room. Now, this is a double example, and it really stuck with me ever since then. What's going on? Is there something in the background that wired us together? I think that's a good way to think about the spiritual. We are often tempted to think of something aloof and weird and foreign, but when we talk about the spiritual, we're really talking about, as I said earlier, another dimension, like something behind the veil. It's this present reality we are in, but it's not something we see. And like the question I started, one of the biggest mistakes any one of us could make is to assume that all that we see, feel, and hear is all there is. No, there is another dimension that just stands behind something you could describe like a veil of reality. It separates between what we see, the material world, and what we don't see and feel and touch. But that reality exists. And that scenario I narrated is one example of when that reality is active, letting you know, I'm here. I'm sure you've had other experiences. Let me give you another one. There are times you're thinking of someone and all of a sudden you receive a call from them. What could have happened? It's not Google listening to your mind and talking to their mind that this person is thinking about you. It is something beyond Google. It is something beyond AI. It is something beyond tech. It is something spiritual. And it is real. It exists. But because we have this philosophy where we don't so much make much of the spiritual, we downplay those experiences. So either we are those who rule out the spiritual in general, or we are those who only think of spiritual as spirits. But think of spiritual in that way. There is another dimension to reality. It's same reality. It's same world. It's same life. But there's another dimension. There is one just somewhere beyond the veil. Just somewhere beyond a curtain, an invisible curtain. And just as activities are going on in this visible universe, visible world, visible reality, stuffs are going on on that other side of the veil. Stuffs are happening in that other dimension of reality. And often, if you go to ancient languages, including biblical stories, it is called heaven. Yeah, nowadays we use the word sky to mean the literal heavens, but in the ancient world, heaven was used to describe all of those reality. Remember that words can be ambiguous. Words can mean a couple of different things. So heaven for the ancient cultures either meant the sky, the literal sky, physical universe, or the space beyond the veil, the reality just beyond the veil where spirits dwell. Heaven is the language the ancients used to describe that reality. But let's talk a little about that. I've just tried to show you that there is another reality beyond what we see, what we feel, what we smell, what we hear. There is another reality beyond that. So if that makes room that there is the spiritual world, there is another dimension to reality, we can go on and ask the other question and try to answer it. Are there spirits? Because it's a different thing to say there is a spiritual world and there are actual spirits, personalities in that world. Are there such things as spirits? Before I answer that question, I need to also kind of correct our opinions about the term spirits. Like I just said earlier, often we can think of spirits like foreign entities. But that's not really what the ancient people meant when they used terms like spirits or gods. They really meant personalities just a little bit different from us. They exist in that other sphere I just described, in this other dimension, in that dimension where you don't really see, feel, and touch. They exist in that dimension, but they are personalities like us. And the interesting thing is, they are more powerful. That's the difference. They are more powerful. But that isn't really an explanation. That's just, I'm giving you what they mean by spirit. But do such personalities, such entities, do they really exist? Remember, they are not foreign entities from far away. They are entities, personalities in this same reality we live in. But they kind of live in a realm beyond that veil of what we feel, the physical world. They exist in that world. But now let's really establish it. Are there personalities of such? Think again about the experience I shared. There are times you're thinking of someone and all of a sudden that person calls you on the phone. It's not enough to say something connects you to them. That makes it sounds like a machine in that other aspect. Like I said, it's not Google, it's something spiritual. But it's kind of wrong to treat them like machines. You have a thought, and then the spiritual wires pick it up and pass it on to the other person. Not exactly. Think about the older practices of communication before we had technology today. When people trained birds to take messages and give to people far away, miles away. Think of that kind of picture. Think about that kind of operation behind that veil. Personalities that picked up on what you were thinking in your heart and then dropped it to that other person so that they decided, oh, it could have been you who would call first and they would have felt the same way. Oh, I was just thinking about you. Or it could have been them who called first and you have that feeling, oh, I was just thinking about you. But there was a personality that picked that up and it's dropped to them, if I may say it that way. But it's not just birds. Whatever kind of personalities those personalities are, they are personalities. Not humans, they are not humans, but they are intelligences. They exist, they act, they think. They are personalities. But not to confuse them with human personalities. And watch the words I use, personalities, not necessarily human. Behind the veil are strange personalities, but there are those personalities beyond the veil. Again, today we just want to establish that there is that other dimension of reality. We're not just the ones out here. And if you're struggling to imagine how that all works, because for many of us, we just taking language that has been offered to us, it's also good we actually think about what the language you've inherited, what it actually means. And that's the picture I'm actually painting for you today, that there is another dimension to reality. And that's what the ancients usually describe as heaven, or which we call the spiritual world today. But that's our term. The ancient people called it heaven. Now I know that kind of clashes with certain conceptions of heaven, but maybe we'll address that in the next video.